What would you do if your parents looked you in the eye and told you you weren't worth the investment? My name is Emma Wilson. I was 24 years old when my college graduation turned into something far bigger than a ceremony. It became the sweetest, most public revenge I never planned. It happened right there in our matching black caps and gowns. My sister Lily smiling like she always did, basking in the attention. And me, I was smiling too, but for a very different reason. Let me take you back to the moment it all broke. We grew up in a neat white picket fence kind of suburb in Michigan. On the outside, everything looked picture perfect. Birthday parties, Christmas cards, those awkward family photos with identical sweaters. But inside that house, the truth was different. My parents, Robert and Diana Wilson, were classic middle-class achievers. Dad worked as an accountant, methodical and reserved. Mom was a high school English teacher who quoted Shakespeare when she was frustrated and prided herself on raising strong women. Irony right now. Lily, 2 years younger than me, was their golden girl. Blonde curls, dimples, straight A's with half the effort, and somehow always center stage. Me, I was the mature one, the quiet one, the backup daughter. Christmas mornings told the story best. Lily would unwrap tech gadgets, designer clothes, expensive jewelry. I'd get socks, art supplies from the dollar bin. Once I got a half-used sketch pad, Mom said she found it in the closet and thought of me. It stung, but I learned early to hide it, to not rock the boat. Your sister just needs more encouragement, Mom would say. She has promise. And for years I swallowed it, the favoritism, the casual dismissal of everything I did. Like the time I got second place in the regional business fair as a sophomore, Mom barely looked up from her laptop. But when Lily won a local debate match, full-page Facebook post, dinner celebration, homemade cupcakes with her name and icing. Even then, I knew. I was the supporting character in a story where Lily always played the lead. But I didn't quit. I couldn't. Deep down, I believed I could work harder, be undeniable, outperform the expectations they refused to set for me. Then came the day we both got into Westfield University. That moment should have changed everything. I remember the dinner like it was yesterday. I was first to open the letter, full acceptance to Westfield's competitive business program. My hands shook. I was speechless, overwhelmed. I got in, I whispered. Dad nodded from behind his phone. That's nice, Emma. Nice. Then Lily burst through the door, screaming with joy. I'm going to Westfield. She'd gotten in, too, for political science. The celebration was instant. Mom popped sparkling cider. Dad hugged her so hard he lifted her off the floor. They danced around the kitchen while I sat there with my untouched acceptance letter. But the real blow came 2 weeks later, a rare family dinner. All 4 of us at the table, no phones. I thought finally maybe they'd talk about plans, help me figure out housing tuition. Instead, Dad cleared his throat and said, We've been saving for college since Lily was born. The tuition's steep, but we'll cover it entirely so she can focus on her studies. Lily lit up. Mom beamed. And me, I waited. Waited for them to mention me. My tuition. My future. Nothing came. What about me? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. They didn't even flinch. Emma, Dad said, shifting uncomfortably. We only had enough for one of you, and Lily's always shown more academic promise. She's a safer bet. A safer bet. Mom reached over, placing her hand on mine with a rehearsed tenderness. You've always been so independent. We thought you'd manage. Maybe loans or community college. That was the moment something inside me shattered. All those years, the silence, the subtle rejections. I could excuse it all until they looked me in the face and told me I wasn't worth the price tag. She deserved it. But you didn't. Those words carved a scar I still carry. That night, I locked myself in my room and cried until my body hurt. All the nights I stayed late studying, the hours spent working after school, the straight A's I fought for, none of it mattered. To them, I was always the understudy, and yet I didn't break, not fully, because somewhere in the wreckage of that night, a different voice whispered back, "They don't see you, but you will make them." What I did next, it changed everything. But the real story was only just beginning. I woke up the next morning with swollen eyes and a decision that tasted like steel in my mouth. They weren't going to help me, not 1 cent, so I was going to help myself. The next day, I packed a small bag and drove 2 hours to the one person who had never made me feel like second best, my grandmother Eleanor. Her lake house had always been the only place I could breathe. Even as a child, she'd sit beside me on the porch while I sketched the trees and water. "You see the world differently, Emma," she used to say. "Don't let anyone dim that light." That day I spilled everything: the tuition betrayal, the years of quiet favoritism, the humiliation. She didn't interrupt. She just held my hand, her weathered fingers gripping mine tightly. "My darling girl," she said when I finally stopped, "sometimes life's worst betrayals are just fuel for your biggest rise. Promise me something. Go anyway. Show them what they missed." That was all the permission I needed. I returned home and began working, like my life depended on it, because in a way it did. I applied for every scholarship grant and work-study program I could find. I met with my high school counselor, Mrs. Chen, who offered her evenings to help me navigate financial aid. "You're the most determined student I've ever met," she said. By the time we submitted my 25th scholarship application, I had a spreadsheet color-coded like military strategy. Most grants were small, $500 here, $1,000 there. Not nearly enough to cover Westfield's steep tuition. But with federal loans, private loans co-signed by Grandma Eleanor, and a patchwork of aid, I scraped together enough for my first year. While Lily picked out dorm themes and planned her goodbye party, I found a tiny apartment 45 minutes off campus, shared with 3 strangers I met through a university housing forum. It had peeling paint, a single working heater, and a bathroom door that didn't close properly. Rent was cheap. That was enough. Then came the job hunt. I landed 2 part-time gigs, a busy coffee shop near campus for weekdays and a small bookstore for weekends. My schedule became a blur of early mornings, caffeine textbooks, and budgeting apps. Meanwhile, my parents were posting photos of Lily's campus move-in like it was the royal wedding. They hired professional movers. They bought her a brand new MacBook designer bedding and threw a going-away brunch for their friends to celebrate their brilliant daughter's journey. And me, I packed my secondhand clothes into battered suitcases and taped cardboard boxes I'd begged from the local grocery store. The night before I left, Mom handed me a bag of her old twin-size sheets. "I figured you might need these," she said. "They're still clean." That was it. No send-off, no ride to campus, not even a second glance. I drove myself in my beat-up Honda, a decade old and prone to overheating. No one offered to check the oil. As I merged onto the highway, I stared ahead through the cracked windshield and whispered to myself, "This is it. This is your chance. You fail and no one's coming to save you." When I arrived, Lily texted me a photo of her dorm setup: white string lights, plush headboard, a mini fridge stocked with sparkling water. Meanwhile, I walked into my new place to find half-unpacked boxes, roommates blasting music, and a single sagging mattress with no frame. That night, as the city noise bled through the thin walls, I lay awake on my mattress and wondered, can I actually do this? I was scared. Terrified, really. But just as panic threatened to consume me, my phone chimed. A message from Grandma Eleanor. "Remember, my brave girl, diamonds are made under pressure. And you're already shining." I read it 3 times. Then I sat up, pulled out my planner, and created a schedule so airtight it could have held a moon launch. Class, coffee shop, study, bookstore, sleep, repeat. There would be no parties, no game days, no lazy brunches. I wasn't here to fit in. I was here to rise. And slowly, something incredible began to happen. In my business classes, I didn't just survive, I thrived. Concepts like budgeting strategy and time management, I was living them. When students asked how to calculate ROI, I explained it with examples from my coffee shop's inventory system. Professor Bennett, my business ethics instructor, stopped me after class one day. "Your analysis of the resource allocation case was outstanding. You think like someone who's already running a business. That's because, in a way, I was. My entire life had become a startup operation. And then, just when I thought I couldn't take another step, someone unexpected walked into my life. Her name was Zoe, one of my roommates, a nursing student with messy buns and a heart that didn't know how to quit. She noticed my crazy schedule before I even mentioned it. One night, she left a Tupperware labeled, "For Emma, eat this or I'll cry in the fridge." Inside, homemade lasagna and a sticky note with a drawing of a smiling potato. "You can't run on caffeine and air," she said when I asked about it. "My parents taught me that family means feeding the people you love." She became my lifeline. She edited my papers when I fell asleep at the keyboard, made flashcards for my exams, forced me to take 10-minute breaks to stretch and breathe. Zoe didn't owe me anything, but she gave me everything. "My family shows love with support," she said one night. And sometimes the family we choose is better than the one we're born into. And just like that, I had a new family. Because while my parents continued pretending I was doing fine, while Lily basked in dinners and phone calls and weekend visits, I was building something else. Resilience. 1 week, $1, one silent triumph at a time. But life wasn't done testing me yet, because the next challenge, it would shake everything. By the time sophomore year rolled around, I had somehow turned chaos into routine. I was waking up at 5 a.m. studying for 2 hours before my coffee shop shift, squeezing in classes during the day, and clocking weekends at the bookstore. Evenings were for laundry essays and staring blankly at bank balances. Exhaustion was constant, but so was momentum. Then one Thursday afternoon, the floor dropped out. "We're cutting hours," my coffee shop manager said, avoiding my eyes. "Corporate's slowing down for the season. I can only give you 8 hours next week." I blinked. Just 8. I'd built my entire fragile budget around those shifts. That night, I opened my spreadsheet and stared at the numbers like they might magically rearrange. Rent was due in 2 weeks. Tuition wasn't far behind. My emergency fund gone 2 textbooks ago. For the first time, I let myself panic. Really panic. But before I spiraled too far, I remembered someone miss. Winters, the assistant director at Financial Aid. She'd once told me, "Come see me before it becomes a crisis." I showed up at her office the next morning, sleep-deprived and barely holding it together. After reviewing my case, she looked up with a soft frown. "Your academic record is impeccable. Let's see what we can do." Turns out, because of my GPA and financial hardship, I qualified for an emergency grant, a small one, but enough to survive the month. "And there's more," she added. "Professor Bennett submitted your name for a research assistant role in the business department. It pays better than the coffee shop and fits your class schedule." You interested? Was I interested? I nearly cried on the spot. That job didn't just save me, it transformed me. Professor Bennett Sharp, perceptive and intimidating in the best way, welcomed me into her study on small business resilience. I analyzed data, compiled reports, and gradually began to offer real insight. "You've got a mind for patterns," she said during one meeting. "Have you considered entrepreneurship?" I had, quietly, secretly, since those nights at Grandma Eleanor's lake house, when I read about CEOs and self-made founders under a blanket with a flashlight. And now, for the first time, someone powerful was saying I could be one of them. That night, something inside me ignited. I took everything I was learning, marketing, project management, digital tools, and began sketching a plan, a real business, my own. By winter break, I had launched a scrappy online platform offering virtual assistant services for small businesses. I created service packages, wrote pitch emails, and built a basic site using free tools and pure willpower. At first, it was just a side hustle. But by junior year, it was a real business with regular clients, growing revenue, and a name that began to spread on campus, Emma Wilson, the girl who ran her own agency while crushing her coursework. That business saved me in more ways than one. I was finally able to quit the bookstore, free up time for more focused classes, and even start paying off my smaller loans. Zoe, ever the unofficial CEO of my emotional support department, made sure I didn't crash from burnout. "You built something out of nothing," she told me one night over stir-fry. "That's not normal, that's powerful." And suddenly, I felt something I'd never felt before. Not just capable, not just resilient, I felt respected. By my professors, my clients, my peers. even strangers who read about my business in a local entrepreneurship blog. Meanwhile, Lily's world remained a curated highlight reel, photos of her at campus galas, snaps of weekend brunches, updates about her study abroad program in Italy. Her captions were full of hashtags like "were blessed" and "grind mode," though I couldn't tell you what exactly she was grinding. Our relationship was polite, surface level. She'd invite me to sorority mixers and I'd decline citing work. We didn't talk about college finances or the elephant-sized betrayal still parked in our family's living room. But that silence was about to break in a way I didn't expect. One rainy Tuesday evening, I heard a knock on my apartment door. I opened it to find Lily soaked pale and clutching a laptop like it might explode. "I'm failing my thesis seminar," she blurted out. "What my professor says, my entire research method is flawed. I have 3 weeks to rebuild everything. If I don't, I won't graduate." She stood there trembling. I should have shut the door, should have let her feel the panic I'd known so intimately. But instead, I stepped aside. "Come in," I said quietly. "Let's take a look." We spent the next 5 hours rebuilding her framework. By 2 a.m., surrounded by scribbled notes and caffeine, she looked at me and whispered, "How do you do this?" "The jobs, the classes, your business, everything." I shrugged. I had to. No one else was going to do it for me. She stared at me stunned. I had no idea. Mom and Dad always just said you were doing fine. That sentence, that weapon, I looked her in the eye. Fine is what you say when you don't want to look closer. Lily didn't respond, but the silence that followed felt different this time, like understanding had finally cracked the surface. That night marked a turning point, not just for her thesis, but for us. As we rebuilt her project, piece by piece, I saw something new in her eyes, not just desperation, respect, genuine overdue respect. And for the first time, I wondered, maybe the story wasn't about revenge anymore. Maybe it was about becoming impossible to ignore. By the time senior year arrived, I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. My digital marketing agency had grown from a few odd clients to a legitimate business, serving 15 small companies across the state. I hired 2 part-time students to help manage client work and scaled my operations while keeping a perfect GPA. I was no longer scraping by, I was building something real. My professors started talking about me in meetings. Clients referred me to others. And then came the big one. Professor Bennett pulled me aside after class. "You need to enter the National Collegiate Business Innovation Competition," she said, sliding a brochure across her desk. "You've already done the hard part. You're exactly what this award was designed for. The grand prize, $50,000 in funding and national recognition. We worked on the pitch for weeks. Data analysis, growth metrics, market positioning, everything had to be airtight. I rehearsed in empty classrooms, recorded myself until I stopped cringing. And when I finally walked into that last round of judging, I didn't feel like the girl my parents overlooked. I felt like the woman I had built from scratch. And then I won. The oversized check, the trophy, the photo in the university paper, it all felt surreal. But what struck me most was the phone call I got that night. Not from my parents, of course not. It was from Grandma Eleanor. Through tears, she said, "I always knew Emma. Now the world knows too, but my parents, they didn't even mention it. No call, no text, not even a passive-aggressive Facebook like. I'd long stopped expecting anything, but the silence still stung. Meanwhile, Lily had changed. After months of late-night thesis sessions, she'd started showing up as someone new, someone aware. She began rejecting our parents' extravagant gifts. "I'd rather handle it myself," she'd say, "like Emma does." She started asking real questions about privilege, about fairness, about what it meant to coast on love while someone else had to earn scraps. By February, she was genuinely different, a little softer, a lot more honest. Then came a knock at my apartment, this time from Dean Rodriguez. She smiled with that twinkle only deans who know something important have, "Emma," she said, "we'd like you to deliver the student address at graduation. Your story, what you've built, it's exactly what Westfield wants to stand for." I nodded, speechless, but she wasn't done. "There'll be some surprises during the ceremony. Just trust me." I did. April rolled in with blooming magnolias and tight-lipped faculty. Meanwhile, my agency had landed a feature in a regional entrepreneurship magazine. My inbox flooded with interest. I even received an offer from Alexander Global Consulting, one of the nation's top firms. 6 figures, full benefits, relocation support. They wanted me, the girl no one invested in. As graduation approached, my parents returned to town for Lily, of course. They rented a house, planned a lavish party, invited everyone. Me, I got a text. "We assumed you'd be too busy to join, but you're welcome if you want to stop by." The phrasing made it clear I was still an afterthought, but this time it didn't cut as deep, because I knew what they didn't. They were about to watch their forgotten daughter take the spotlight. The night before graduation, Grandma Eleanor arrived with a gift, a custom stole embroidered with the words that carried me through everything diamonds are made under pressure. I wore it with pride. The next morning, I dressed slowly, hair curled, new dress beneath my gown, shoes that wouldn't betray me on stage. As I slipped on that stole, something clicked into place. Not arrogance, not revenge, just peace. Lily texted me, "So proud to be walking beside you today." That right there was a different kind of victory. We met at the robbing area, and when the procession began, I scanned the crowd and found them my parents. Sitting in VIP seats dressed like this was their accomplishment. They waved at Lily. They didn't even notice me walk past until the president stepped up to the mic. Before we conclude, he said we'd like to recognize a few extraordinary students. First, Ms. Emma Wilson of the School of Business. A ripple went through the audience. My parents turned, confused, then stunned. I stepped onto the stage heart, thudding every footstep echoing 4 years of silence, dismissal and defiance. And I spoke. 4 years ago, I arrived at Westfield with nothing but student loans and a refusal to fail. I wasn't given much. No dorm room parties, no family safety net, just grit and a dream. I told them the truth without bitterness, but with clarity. About working 30 hours a week while taking a full course load, about launching a business, about not receiving a cent from the people who were supposed to believe in me first, and the audience listened. Then came the president again. "What many may not know," he said, "is that Emma Wilson not only graduates with the highest honors in the business school, but as this year's valedictorian. She is also the winner of the National Collegiate Business Innovation Competition and has accepted an offer from Alexander Global Consulting." The crowd exploded in applause. And then, Ms. Wilson did all of this while fully self-financing her education, building a business, and supporting herself without family financial support. I glanced at my parents. My father's face had gone pale, my mother frozen. The people around them turned whisper shock admiration, swirling like wildfire. And in that moment, everything shifted. Not because I needed them to be humiliated, but because I finally didn't need their approval at all. I was no longer invisible. I was undeniable. The ceremony continued, but for me, everything had already changed. As I stepped down from the stage, the applause still thundered. Professors, classmates, strangers, people I'd never even met were cheering. I saw Lily rising from her seat, tears streaming down her face, clapping like her life depended on it. Grandma Eleanor sat beside her, unable to stand, but beaming with such fierce pride it could have lit the entire arena. My parents, still frozen. The president had made it crystal clear I'd done everything they thought was impossible, and now everyone knew. But Dean Rodriguez wasn't done. In honor of Ms. Wilson's extraordinary perseverance, she said, stepping to the mic, the university board has established the Emma Wilson Resilience Scholarship to support students who demonstrate exceptional determination in overcoming personal or financial hardship. A murmur swept through the crowd. My name, my journey was now tied to helping students who were walking the same impossible road I had. The symbolic victory. It was complete. As I walked back to my seat, Lily reached out, grabbed my hand, and whispered, "You are amazing, and they were so wrong about you." After the ceremony, the lawn filled with families and cameras and bouquets. I was approached by professors, mentors, even business executives who'd read about my competition win. But the moment I finally approached my family, it was awkward. My father forced a laugh. "Well, that was quite a surprise. You've been holding out on us, huh?" I looked at him, not angry, just done pretending. "I've never hidden who I am," I said softly. "You just weren't looking." Before they could respond, Lily looped her arm around mine and announced to a nearby group of relatives, "Isn't it incredible what Emma accomplished, all of it on her own? No help, just grit." My mother's face flushed. Aunt Susan's eyebrows lifted. Even Uncle Jack looked stunned. Suddenly, the golden daughter wasn't standing beside them. She was standing beside me. Dad cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should talk more at the dinner tonight. Come celebrate together." I nodded politely, but in my head, I was already preparing for what that dinner would become. That afternoon, I attended the business school's private reception, an elegant gathering with chandeliers, soft music, and champagne flutes. Professor Bennett gave a speech about me retelling my journey with such emotion that even the catering staff paused to listen. Zoe tackled me with a hug as soon as I walked in. "Boss lady," she shouted, "you did it." She introduced herself to Grandma, Eleanor, and Lily, the supportive grandma. And the sister who finally woke up, she teased gently. Lily chuckled. "Better late than never, I hope." Dean Rodriguez handed me a sleek business card. "Westfield's MBA program. Full scholarship if you're interested. Keep changing the world, Emma." By the time the reception ended, I felt something I'd never truly known: belonging. People here saw me, not just for what I endured, but for what I built out of it. Then my phone buzzed. "Dinner at the rental house, 6 p.m. Hope you'll join. We want to celebrate both our graduates." I showed it to Lily and Grandma Eleanor. "What do you think I asked?" Grandma snorted. "Bit late to play the proud parent card, isn't it?" Lily hesitated. "Maybe. But it could be worth letting them sit with what they missed." I nodded. "Let's go. Not for them, for us." The rental house was packed. Relatives buzzed around with drinks and appetizers. The moment we entered, heads turned. Suddenly, I was the one being swarmed. "Emma, we had no idea. Your speech was incredible. Tell me more about this business." My parents hovered awkwardly on the fringes, no longer the center of attention. Mom approached first, smiling too widely. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart. Truly." But the words felt late. Dad tried to regain control. "You should have told us about this job offer, Alexander Global." "That's a big deal." Uncle Jack, clearly not in the mood for performance, stepped in. "Maybe she didn't tell you because you haven't asked about her life in years." The room went quiet. Mom looked hurt. "We always supported both of you." "No," Lily said clearly. "You didn't." All eyes turned to her. "You invested in me, all of me, emotionally, financially, every step, but Emma. You left her to fend for herself, and she still came out on top." Dad's mouth opened, then closed. Aunt Susan chimed in. "The university president practically called you out on stage. That wasn't subtle." Mom tried to defend. "We had limited resources. We had to make hard choices." Grandma Eleanor's voice cut through like a blade. "Choices based on assumptions. And those assumptions were wrong. You saw one daughter as the golden child and ignored the other until she became too successful to ignore. No one had ever spoken that plainly to them." The family dinner shifted. Questions came to me now, about my business, about the scholarship, about what was next, and my parents. They sat in silence, surrounded by everything they had refused to believe in. By the time dessert arrived, the dynamic had changed permanently. My father, clearly uncomfortable, offered a weak olive branch. "We've been talking. Maybe we could help with your new apartment security deposit or something." It was laughable. A $1,000 gesture after 4 years of silence. No need, I said smoothly. My starting salary at Alexander Global is $90,000. Housing's already covered. The number hit like a hammer. Dad blinked. Mom looked down at her plate. I guess Dad muttered, "You've proven yourself." "I didn't need to," I replied, "but I'm glad you finally noticed." That night as we left, Lily turned to me and said, "Grandma and I are taking a few days at the lake house. Come with us." I smiled. "Yeah, I'd like that." And as we drove away, leaving them standing on that front porch in stunned silence, I realized something powerful. Their approval used to be everything to me. Now it meant absolutely nothing. The weeks after graduation passed like a dream, except this dream was real. I moved into a sleek apartment near Alexander Global's downtown office, used part of my competition winnings for the deposit and modest furnishings. The rest went straight into building the future I used to only fantasize about from my shared apartment floor. My agency kept running too. I didn't shut it down. I promoted my student team to part-time managers, paid them fair wages, structured work around their classes. I wasn't just building for me anymore. I was becoming the mentor I never had. The Business Innovation magazine article dropped a month later. Cover title, "From Ignored to Icon, Emma Wilson's Rise from Nothing." There was a photo of me at graduation cap gown, Grandma, Eleanor, and Lily on either side, that stitch stole draped across my chest. I mailed copies to everyone who mattered, not to prove anything, just to say this happened, and I made it. A week later, I got a text from Mom. "Would you be open to meeting us for lunch, just to talk?" I hesitated. Old wounds don't close cleanly, but growth means confronting, not avoiding. We met at a quiet restaurant. No spectacle, no crowd. Mom spoke first, her voice softer than I remembered. "We've had a lot of time to think about the choices we made." Dad shifted uncomfortably. "We were wrong. We misjudged you." I said nothing. Let the silence sit. "We didn't understand," Mom continued. "You were always capable. But we only saw what we wanted to see, and we're sorry." The apology was imperfect, but it was real. So I told them the truth. "I'm open to a relationship," I said, "but it has to be new, built on reality. Not on who you thought I was or who you wanted me to be." Dad nodded. "That's fair. And one more thing," I added, steady. "Don't ever call what happened a misunderstanding. It was favoritism. It caused damage. Own it." They did. That was the first time I felt, maybe not closure, but a shift. The door cracked open, not wide, but enough to let light in. Meanwhile, Lily and I were rebuilding something deeper than sisterhood. Friendship. She joined a nonprofit focused on educational equity, said it was inspired by watching me overcome everything without support. "I keep thinking about how many Emmas are out there," she told me one evening, "but with less luck, less help, less resilience. What happens to them?" I smiled. "That's what I'm working on, because I decided if the system failed me, then I'd create a better one." With the help of Professor Bennett and Dean Rodriguez, I launched the First Generation Achievement Fund, a scholarship designed not for the highest GPA or the fanciest resume, but for students who'd clawed their way through impossible odds just to sit in a classroom. The first recipient, a young woman studying accounting while working nights and raising her little brothers. I read her application and saw myself years ago, tired, underestimated, but undefeated. I handed her the award myself, told her, "This isn't charity, it's recognition. You're already proving the world wrong. Now you'll have help doing it." And as I watched her hug her mom and cry with relief, I felt something shift in me too. Healing doesn't always come from those who hurt you. Sometimes it comes from making sure no one else has to walk the same hard road alone. My parents came to the award ceremony, sat quietly in the back. Afterwards, Dad approached. "You've created something meaningful," he said. It was simple. But for once, there was no defense, no deflection, just pride. Not in Lily, in me. That mattered. But it wasn't everything, because by then I'd learned that external validation is a mirror, not a compass. It reflects where you are. It doesn't decide where you go. The following summer, on the anniversary of graduation, I visited Grandma Eleanor at the lake house. We sat on the porch sipping tea as the sun dipped low. She handed me a small wooden box. Inside was a silver bracelet, elegant, timeless. This was given to me by my grandmother, she said. She told me, "A woman's value is never measured by applause. It's measured by the silence she survives." I've been saving it for someone who understands. She fastened it around my wrist, and I cried. Not from pain, but from the release of it. I had survived, thrived, rebuilt, and somewhere along the way I became someone my younger self would look up to. The family I built, Zoe Grandma Lily, my mentors, even clients who saw me as more than a line on an invoice, became my real roots, and my parents, they're learning, slowly, consistently. We meet sometimes. It's not perfect. It's not supposed to be. Forgiveness isn't approval. It's freedom. And as for Lily, well, she's still figuring out how to use her voice. But now she never speaks without remembering who didn't get a voice at the table growing up. The best part? She listens now. One crisp fall morning, hiking a trail near the lake, she asked, "Do you think you'll ever really forgive them?" I paused. Forgiveness, I said, isn't saying it was okay. It's saying I won't let it own me. We stood at the overlook in silence, looking out. She nodded. They lost something big, not knowing who you were all those years. I smiled. They did. If you've ever been the one overlooked, the one they didn't believe in, the one who had to build while others were carried, just know this. Their limited vision doesn't define your future. Your value isn't given. It's realized. And the day they finally see it won't even matter, because by then you'll already be so far beyond their imagination, they'll barely recognize the view. So tell me, have you ever been underestimated by the people who should have believed in you most? Drop your story below. Like and subscribe if this hit home. And remember, sometimes the greatest revenge is simply becoming everything they said you couldn't.